Very quickly on I don't think the question of imperialism we should be discussing here as an academic concept or theoretical question. It's a sub-imperialism is a concept coming from the Marxist dependency theory, developed in the 1970s during the Brazilian dictatorship. I think it is very important. It's a very important concept, but I don't agree that it's awkward to see China or Russia as sub-imperial countries because they don't connect directly with the center of imperialism, which is the USA. So I think that NATO is imperialist, and the others are also territorialist expansionists, and they've been expanding capitalist exploitation. And we need to discuss that other than discussing the concept of sub-imperialism as a label. That's my point of discussion with my friend Patrick. Patrick has been calling Russia as a rogue imperial country. Maybe that's more awkward than sub-imperial. A short word to BRICS expansions to Argentina, and also I need to mention also the NDB, the BRICS New Development Bank's expansion towards other 4 countries. I think this expansion is important. The more southern countries that we have in some kind of coalition is important, but it still brings, it doesn't overcome the limitations of these institutions. In terms of environmental destruction, I mean, the NDB has been lending money to infrastructure projects which are very polluting. And I must mention the lending to the Brazilian mining company Vale, exactly in the same year, 2019, that Vale had this huge devastation in Brazil when was the collapse of the Mariana Dam, bringing more than 200 people to death and huge environmental devastation in the state of Minas. In the same year, the NDB lent money to Vale. I mean, not to mention Transnet in South Africa and others. So does it mean to have more members in the NDB or in the BRICS? We change the BRICS completely, or BRICS institutions? I don't know, but we need to call attention on the nature of these landings and to bring our struggles to that. I must also mention the limitations of being an alternative to the International Monetary Fund. BRICS has, some of the BRICS countries have had, in the reform of the IMF in 2015, some advantage. They have gained more voting power within the IMF, but South Africa has lost it. But most importantly, the CRA that should function as an alternative to the IMF has not been yet put into work. So we don't have a CRA, and South Africa, as you both know, there has come back to the IMF during the pandemic crisis. So BRICS has not functioned as a sort of cooperation to countries in needs of balance of payment crisis during the pandemic for 2 years. So these are 2 limitations. One last word to BRICS cooperation, a coherent strategy within multilateral institutions. I think that the WTO is a good example. Some of the BRICS have really worked together within the WTO, particularly India and South Africa. In the 1990s, it was India and Brazil working against the patents to medicine for HIV. Now it's India and South Africa trying to get a patent waiver for the vaccine, the anti-COVID vaccine. But Brazil has voted against it. China has voted against it. Russia against it. So we don't see a coherent strategy in these kinds of multilateral forums. And these would be, for instance, good opportunities for BRICS to work together towards, for instance, more access to the vaccine and more access to medicines that are for the people.